Hi, everybody. Creative Katie, Karen Burchill here. I just finished this grid journaling page and I'm so excited to share it with you. My grid journaling has a bit of a twist. I'm not exactly following the traditional path. So here's what you need to know. In grid journaling, you can use any shape or size. You can use rectangles, squares, triangles. I'm tracing key cards. I love the rounded corners, and I've even put some vertical and some horizontal. So change it up. So, why do we grid journal? Grid journaling is a great opportunity to experiment, to try out new materials, to edit yourself, to use as a warm up of the creative processes, try new color schemes. It's just a great experimental platform. I find it very freeing and shakes me out of the dum-dums. Now, as for what colors you're going to use, now here's one of the twists. I'm not choosing the colors. I've already chosen to do grid journaling today, but I'm going to let my color dice decide my fate. I'm going to force myself to do maybe a different color scheme. So I'm rolling each of my color dice, and I'll link the video where I make these color dice if you want to check it out. And I have the three colors that I have to use on my grid journal. It's orange, turquoise, and Payne's gray. I deliberately put Payne's gray on my dice because I like it, but I never quite use it. So then I'm going through my acrylic paints and matching it up as close as I can. Now I know that I'm going to have acrylic paints that match these, but you could go through any of your color mediums, your Inktense blocks, your watercolor, whatever. You can mix and match as long as it's a close proximity to the color. Then I've cut a window template. I'm going to use this to stamp or stencil through, and it's going to keep my white areas, the border areas, clean. Now that I've made it, if I do the key card size again, I have this template. I don't have to remake it every time. So here I'm grabbing a texture stamp from the Songs of the Sea Stamperia set, and I am stamping with black archival ink. I have no idea where this is going. I just determined the colors. I don't have an idea. I just want to get something on the backgrounds. Now, normally I gesso my entire page before I start. I did not gesso it. We're going to deal with that down the road. Gesso prepares the paper for what you're going to put on it. It makes the paint blend easier. There are advantages to it. But again, I didn't know what I wanted to do here or where I was going, so I didn't do that step. So I'm just stamping. Now, my goal here on the grid journaling is to have something similar in each of the grids, but change it up, different. So each one to look different. I then thought, you know what? Instead of using acrylic paint, what if we use some gel prints? So I grabbed my orange, my turquoise, and my blue folder, and I'm just flipping through, as you see me doing, the various gel prints, and I'm pulling out a few of them that I think might work. Now, when I'm going to do collage with this. So it's a small area. So I'm not going to need a lot of sheets or, I'm not going to use any. I'm basically going to end up using one of each. And I'm pulling some. Here we have a couple sheets that actually have Payne's gray and the orange, a combo. I can kill two birds with one stone. So don't forget to include your collage papers as a color medium. I've been watching a lot of people doing collaging on Instagram and stuff, and it's just something I want to get better at. There's a Payne's Gray one. Admittedly, I don't have a lot that goes with Payne's Gray, but you know what? I can get as close as I can. I'm not going to worry too much about being so exact. As I look at it, I'm thinking, oh, I've got this stamp. How does that work? How does that work? I am not spending a lot of time overthinking it at this stage. I'm pulling out, 5 sheets of the teal, 5 sheets of the orange, four of the, end up going back into the folder. This also gives me an opportunity to see what I have, and I might see a gel print like this one and think, oh, I could use this for another project. If you don't flip through what's in your stash periodically, you tend to forget about it. When I make collage papers, most of it's on copy paper, some of it's on tissue paper, and you get different weights. And when you're using it for collage, that gives a different effect in the final piece. It's kind of good. I know because I'm dealing with small grids here, small spaces. I don't want something with too big of a pattern because it's just going to be lost. But right now, I'm just flipping through and whatever catches my fancy is what gets pulled, and then I make the decision of what gets used. So I grabbed this teal one. This has a fine mesh on there, and I'm just ripping this. This is so random. I am trying to get different shapes, sizes, and I'm just going to audition them on the grids, putting them in different ones. I want to end up having some of this on each grid, but I want it to look different. So each one is the same but different. And the idea is that if I like one of these little grids, then I can duplicate that on an art journal background in a larger size or on a canvas. So you're kind of practicing and experimenting with maybe the idea of using it as a jump start in a later project. I like doing this as a warm up because I find doing the grid journaling is very quick, easy. It's using up my scraps here. So now that I have all the teal ones down, or I think I have them down, I'm just going to glue this down with my fluid matte medium. One of the things that I encourage you to do when you're doing grid journaling is don't overthink it. Move fairly quickly and get into that intuitive, creative zone. This is just one layer, right? We've added the second layer. We stamped one layer, now we're collaging one layer. One advantage to doing grid journaling is I rarely have an idea of the finished page. Where sometimes for art journaling, I know exactly where I want to end up, and that causes problems. So as you can see, every one of these I've glued down slightly differently. And there is no right or wrong. In fact, sometimes if you do something, if you say in your mind, it needs to look different, it needs to look different, that's how you're going to discover a composition that you're going to love. So the one twist here was we're not choosing the colors. And the other big twist is later on what I do with the page or with the grid journal when the grid journaling is done. I'm putting the matte medium underneath and on top. And wherever I put the matte medium on the page, it kind of seals that mixed media paper in the same way that gesso would. But I'm not overly mindful. Now, this one, I remember I had these bits going the other direction. I just decided I'm going to change it up. But doing collage and grid journaling is a great way to use up all those little bits. So then I grabbed this orange one and I'm using my punch. I am punch challenged, let me tell you. It always jams. I don't know why. Anyways, I struggle with it and I get it. And I thought, okay, instead of ripping this one, I'm going to do some round shapes. So I grabbed, I think this is the 1 inch um, punch. And then I think I used the 2 inch or 1.5 inch punch as well to get some other sizes. But here I'm just additioning. I'm throwing it down, putting it, and I keep going back and changing it up. Do I like this better? Do I like this better? You can cut the circles in half. I think I do that in a bit. One of the things that I struggle with is sometimes I'm like, oh, I love this gel print. I don't want to waste it. What if I rip it and it doesn't work out? What if it does? So here I'm putting a couple bigger ones, and I like the look of that on my art journal page because while each grid is piece of art in of itself, I also want the whole 9 by 12 page to be a piece of art. And actually, I'm going to turn it into an art journal page. That's part of my twist because I don't leave it as a grid. But you could totally do these mini grids on a canvas. And it's like little mini frame pieces of art that all speak to each other. So here I'm cutting some and playing with it. And I find once you keep going, because you have like here, there's 8 rectangles, you have to push the limit. You start off and you do what you expect, and then you start changing it up and doing something else and doing something else. I'm loving, loving, loving the energy that comes by these two colors. The orange with that turquoise is a great color combo. If I was using it paint, I would have to make sure I dried it because orange and turquoise is going to make kind of a black brown, right? But when I'm using the gel prints, they're just, it's set. There's no blending necessary. And it's really quick and easy. And I'm just learning about collage as I do this. So I think I'm going to end up doing a lot more grid journaling where I'm using collage. It's very challenging because they're small, but I'm just going to get a feel for it. And I love the idea, the twist of using the color dice. Because I don't know about you, but I tend to always end up in the same color zone. You're in your happy place. And you won't learn if you don't ever get out of your comfort zone. So you can see how everyone has the same elements in it. They're just different and they have different ones. What I also like here is and is something that I struggle with. There is a lot of white space, and I am determined not to get rid of the white space like I tend to do. Now I'm going back. I was like, oh, I think I want a little bit more turquoise on this one. So I'm stepping back and adding. You can always do that. If there's anything that you put down that you decide, ooh, I don't like that, well, gesso covers it up and you can always add. I'm using different amounts, different sizes. And there is the grid journal as it stood at this point. Now, I haven't used Payne's Gray yet. But before I'm stencil with Payne's Gray, I did put a coat of clear gesso on there and made sure it dried. The reason being, if I make a mistake, once it's gessoed, I'll be able to lift it up and get rid of it. So I'm going to stencil using this Crafter's Workshop stencil with the Payne's Gray. So you can mix and match your color mediums. You don't have to stick to one thing. So kind of put that in, kind of swirp. So now, or swoop. I want to do this Same motif on all of them, but I'm challenging myself to come across different ways of doing it. So different amounts. And this just, it almost unified what I had already put down there. So here I'm putting a little at the bottom and then a little bit swooping from the top. So again, when you challenge yourself to use the stencil in 8 different ways, you may come up with, and I absolutely loved how this added to it. I did play around with some collage paper that was Payne's gray color, and it looked okay, but this just made everything work together better. Kind of pushed everything back, unified the collage pieces. And this is what mixed media is all about. Mixing up those medias, using collage papers, using stamps, using stencils, using acrylic paint. I was tempted to do this with texture paste, and then I would have texture. But I opted for simplicity here. But you can take your texture paste, add the Payne's gray to it. It might be slightly lighter, and then have done that. I love the motion that this stencil motif gives. I'll put the name of this stencil in the description box. So there we have, oh, the finished ones. Now I'm going to shade around them. I'm thinking I'm done, but I am going to shade around each individual rectangle. Having coated this with the clear gesso makes the shading work better. And if I put somewhere I don't want it, I'll be able to lift it up very quickly. But you can see the difference the shading makes here to the ones that aren't already shaded. This technique of shading is called floating acrylic. It's something I learned when I did folk art painting on wood. And I'm using black acrylic paint and my angle brush. I'll link the video where I specifically teach this shading technique if you want to check it out. This is framing my individual pieces of art. And right now, I could not be happier. I am in love with what happened here. I have left white space. I use collage effectively. I'm loving the play of the colors here. Yay, color dice. And I'm even liking the shape. Now, here's the twist. I'm going to turn that grid journal into a journal page. And I went through my stash. I found these kind of doodle flowers that I had in there. It was a printable, and I'm gluing a couple of those down and using the grids as the backdrop. So I turned the grids into my background. But I can still see the grids if I want to duplicate that motif. Then I grab my It's About Time sentiment pack. My digital sentiment packs are available at NINNYSNAPKINS.com for purchase. And the joy of those is you can resize them to fit whatever shape. And I find ones that says dreams take us forward, memories take us back. And this is a perfect place to put it. So I turned my grid journal into just an art journal page. I've used those grids as the backdrop. My photocopy of the flower that's a little faded, so I grab my black Posca pen and I'm just darkening up. I could have used a liner brush and black acrylic paint. I could have used my fine line applicator bottle. All would work. Would you have painted the flowers? Or left them white like I did? Again, no right or wrong. You make a decision in the moment, and either you love it or you learn from it. By outlining this and making it bolder, it just brought it to the forefront. Then I grabbed that orange paper and I punched out two centers. I thought, you know what? I'm going to unify this element with my background. Grab the Posca pen and I'm kind of doing a sketchy line around it, and then a sketchy line around the sentiment as well. Then I'm just gluing the centers down and taking off the tape from the coil. I work flat and that works well for me. I do a sketchy line around the center. It's not giving me the effect that I want. So I grab my angle brush and I do some shading around the center, and that just ties everything in. I hope that you go and give grid journaling a try. Make it work for you. See what the benefits are. At first, I warn you, the first time I did it, I really wasn't happy. I found it very constraining, awkward. But the more I do it, the more I love it. So this is a grid journal with orange, turquoise, and Payne's gray. Let me know what you think of the finished page. Until next time, go get creative.